Hello, welcome to The Educator's Edge, the podcast where we help you teach smarter, lead brighter, and grow stronger. Hello, my name's Lisa Ellum, and I'm your go-to guide. I'm your learning bestie, here to bring the art and science of adult learning to you in a way that's practical, that's insightful and empowering. Whether you're building a teaching business, boosting your confidence, or mastering the craft, you're in the right place. So let's dive into our St Paddy's Day version of leading adults in their learning. In this session, we're going to talk a little bit about the neuroscience of learning and how the traditions and customs that we have, or at least in my memory, of St Paddy's Day, how that relates to adult learning. So hopefully it'll be fun and informative. So the art and science of adult learning. What disappoints me most is, in my experience, adult learners become content experts, and then they are expected to understand, to be the teaching and learning expert. And teaching and learning for kids, we need qualifications. We need experience, we need exposure. And yet in the adult learning environment, if you're good at something that's quite different to adult teaching adults, then you're expected to understand how to teach. There is an art. Some people are natural at it. There's no doubt about that, but there is also a science. What I'm enjoying about teaching adults in this contemporary world is the science. What I've been getting into lately is the neuroscience. So how our brain, how our environment help create the conditions for adults to learn. And learning as an adult can happen right through the lifespan. All right, my St. Paddy's Day memories. I was a nurse before I was a teacher, and one of my favourite memories was St. Patrick's Day in Fremantle in Western Australia. So St. Paddy's Day always took place in an Irish pub, Rosie O'Grady's. It's changed since it was when I was there, but it used to be so much fun. And everybody went down. Everybody was dressed in green. Everybody was drinking Guinness, and we were all dancing. And often we were grateful to St. Paddy's, St. Patrick's of Ireland and the Irish for celebrating this day. So it's St. Patrick's Day is known for its parade, for shamrocks, for celebrating this Irish heritage. What does St. Patrick's Day mean to you? What comes to your mind when you think of St. Patrick's Day? Whether you've experienced, different celebrations or not everybody celebrates St. Patrick's Day. He's a Catholic saint, actually, who was kidnapped and taken to Ireland and then lived in Ireland and supposedly got all the snakes or the serpents out of Ireland. So there's quite a story to his journey, and it's not all fun and gathering. But what I want to focus on is what we do and how we celebrate. It's because beneath the celebrations are these powerful lessons of how we create the environment for adults to succeed in their learning. These include, storytelling that creates emotion, from the traditions of Ireland. This storytelling that creates emotion mediates the brain's response to the social connection and the rituals that we perform. So, there's this whole neuroscience at play that makes learning more engaging and more memorable. Get your words. All right. So, oh gosh, the old chalk and talk method of teaching, where we, being the expert, just spew the information. We might write a few key points up on the board, and then end of lecture, go home, I've taught you. The world is changing. We're realizing that the chalk and talk method is great for some people. It's also good for other people at different times, but there are a number of people who do not learn effectively by listening or writing. There are a number of people who are kinesthetic, who are relational in their learning. We have to talk about it. Or are creative, musical, rhyme, rhythm, repetition. So my belief is that as adults, we're a little bit of everything, and everybody's different, but we've all got a little bit of a measure of everything. You sit me in a classroom, and I've got a doctorate in education. You sit me in a classroom and talk at me all day, there's not going to be much learning. So what does this mean? As educators, trainers, industry professionals, we can take a leaf out of the St Paddy's Day celebrations and traditions to enhance how we teach adults. Here's how the neuroscience, storytelling, and meaningful ritual connect to effective learning. Can you think about in your learning journey, whether you're a teacher or a learner, how did you learn best? One of the participants in my research told me that he had to take notes and he had to draw pictures. And then as he learnt more in the journey, he would add to his pictures and add to his list of, I don't know, you call it a dictionary of terms, I guess. But it was by drawing the pictures that he could understand how systems worked. Yeah. Another adult learner of mine, she was in her mid-60s, so we call that a gerigogical learner. So she used to she much prefers the face-to-face because she could interact with other learners. She found that it was those casual conversations, she called them the water cooler conversations, so that like when you go and get a drink from the water cooler, you might sort of say, I didn't get what she was talking about. And then the other person might say, yeah, I struggled with it too, but then I thought about this, which meant that this is how I saw this all connected. So it was that learner storytelling which created that shortcut in the other adult learners learning, to really cement and concrete the ideas. So sometimes it's the words from other students, other adults in a similar sort of situation. The Irish, however, have long been known for their storytelling and traditions. The legends of St Patrick, the Celtic folklore and oral histories are passed down from generation to generation. And this is through the storytelling that the traditions have stayed alive and the folklore has stayed alive. Neuroscience tells us that the stories are more than mere entertainment. These stories are tools, and they're teaching tools that you should have in your back pocket, in your tool belt for teaching. And these are one of the most effective ways to engage students. Once again, if you overuse it, they'll disengage. So if you've got a creative story or a story that provokes emotion or places the student at the center of the story, they'll be really, really effective learning tools because of the association. The one memory connects to another memory, which connects to the meaning that you're trying to share. When we hear a well-told story, multiple areas of our brain are activated, including language centers, sensory centers, and emotional regions. The process is known as neurocoupling, where these two centers are forming connections. And it helps learners connect information to personal experiences, whether they're yours or whether they're theirs. By you telling it and relating the scene and creating the story, then you're making it easier to remember and understand for the learner. So, what can we do in the classroom? Think about how we can apply storytelling to adult learning in your classroom. The first tip I would give you is to replace the dry old chalk and talk or whiteboard and talk lectures with stories. Use narratives, use real life case studies, and create that memory around the story. Create the emotion around the story. Use your personal expertise, your personal knowledge and experiences, your industry related stories to create, once again, that emotional engagement. Encourage learners to share their own experiences of deep connection. Getting the learner to share what they know, what they already know, and how this has impacted them is not only powerful for the learner, it's powerful for all the other learners in the group. Yeah, we're creating that social setting where learning is it's connected to our relationships. Now, I've recently been reading a book called The Developing Mind, and it's saying that there is a connection. There's a energy and information connection between the mind, which is different to the brain, the relationships, and the embodied body and the embodied brain. So when we're talking about brain, we're talking about the physical brain, but the mind is something different. That's your thoughts that are created. And it's a different part of reality. They call this a triangle of human experiences. So what does this mean? There's a relationship to your mind, your thoughts and thinking. There's a relationship to the people in your world and people from other worlds. It's a connection. And what our mind is actually doing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the integration of the energy and the formation within the nervous system between people. So this Developing Mind book is, I found completely fascinating. It says that a healthy living involves integration of energy and information within the nervous system between people. Integration is something that we're using as a simple and accessible term to indicate linking those different parts of the brain, the different parts of the system. And it's the basis for optimizing self-organization. Integration for organize is the organizing principle that connects the ways that energy and information flow is shared with relationships, is shaped, and that's in the mechanism of the embodied nervous system, simply termed the brain, and is regulated, which is through our thoughts and thinking, the mind. So, in other words, our relational mind comes from our connection with people and the planet. And the reality of the energy information flow arises from the connections within. So on page 36 of the Developing Mind, it explains the brain in terms of the prefrontal cortex. If you put your hand out in a palm, the prefrontal cortex is on the top. We've got our cerebral cortex on our knuckles, the limbic regions on the thumb, and the hypothalamus is there too, and then the amygdala. So that's all deep inside the brain. And then you've got your brain stem, the base of skull, and our spinal cord. And when they fold over, it looks like this. So deep inside, we have our processing parts. Now, the other book that I'm reading is let's get closer. What Happened to You? Oh, gosh, let's go in the middle. No. Let's go back. There we go. What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And this is a recording of their conversations over the years. And what he is saying is that we have our brain stem down the bottom, and all our nervous systems come into this brain stem, which is down the base. And then we have this central nervous system processing place. And then we've got a couple of different areas. We've got the diencephalon, the limbic, and the cortex. And what he says is that when we're receiving information, it's received at the lower end of the brain. When we can get to reasoning and deep learning, it's the information has been processed and we're up to around here, and we're able to manage life a lot easier. We'll be able to accept failures. We're able to manage stress. And as you know, learning is stressful, because we're changing our environment. So we need to be able to manage stress. A little bit of stress is really good, they're saying, for our learning. However, if you've experienced trauma, then there's a blockage from letting the regulatory system regulate those emotions. And it's just coming from this sensory area where all our information is being received from the senses. But the trauma can prevent the processing in these higher parts of the brain. I think that's what it's saying. I thought that was key. It was really interesting. So that being able to process what's happened to us is a really important part of our learning, and trauma does impact how much we learn. How can we impact that? It's by going back to the things that we're learning in the rituals, repetition, storytelling, making that new learning in a safe environment important and repetitive. So that's moving quite nicely onto the next section, which is the social learning, which comes from St Paddy's power to celebrate and connect. For me, St Patrick's Day has always been a day about social events, bringing people together in a shared experience, reinforcing belonging and tradition. Neuroscience and my research on adult learning and what adult learners need backs up the idea that learning in a social system is far more effective. The brain releases oxytocin, a neurotransmitter linked to trust and bonding, when people engage in group learning. This explains why collaborative learning environments, discussions, hands-on experience tend to be more impactful for adult learners than passive learning environments. Social learning also increases dopamine, the brain's chemical for reward, the reward chemical, and enhances motivation and memory. So at the end of the day, human beings, we're just pack animals. How do we use this in the adult learning classroom? Well, we need to integrate discussions. We need to let student to student relationships develop so that they can discuss their ideas and they can teach each other. Have you heard of peer teaching, where we have a learner expert teaching the other groups, and collaborative activities? What can we build together? What can we, demonstrate together? How can we concrete that learning so that we do become the experts in that field? Peer mentoring and coaching is another way. Like, this is a really good way to help adults reinforce knowledge through our social bonds. Use that relationship part. And, we're using our mind as well as our brain. So we're using our thoughts and thinking in this social situation to get the knowledge that we want, that we need. Sometimes it is creating rituals in learning, and environments such as, a weekly reflection. What have I learned this week? Or shared success stories. This all builds the community. And one of my findings was community. Adult learners need community. I guess the next big question is, how do you create this on the online environment? It's essential that we do. It's essential for an adult learner's learning that we do find a way to create that community environment. We have so many ways to connect online now. As an educator, we need to trust that they can connect online, and we don't need to be supervising everything they do, and we don't need to know about everything they do. It also brings into question, sharing resources. I think it's a great idea. But there might be some issues, and you'll just have to be very clear about the expectation that everybody needs to do their own work. But if you can help a colleague learn, brilliant. This is what we're going for. We want everybody to succeed. And sometimes the best teachers are the students, not the learners. Rituals and repetition. Strengthening our neural pathways is another step. St Patrick's Day celebration, it involves repeated customs like wearing green, like toasting friends, like listening to Irish music, drinking Guinness. These rituals help reinforce the cultural identity and our memory. Much like effective learning strategies strengthen neural pathways. Repetition is key to learning because of the synaptic plasticity. Our brain is plastic. Our memories are plastic. When we're talking about neurons, we're actually talking about actual nerves. Synapses are where one nerve meets another nerve and continues like, a train track. When we're creating new memories or doing different things, we're veering off a little bit. So the brain is malleable, so that we can keep learning. And this malleability strengthens the connection through repeated use. Adults learn best when we're exposed to key concepts multiple times in different contexts. So I always like the law of threes. I'm such a fan of the law of threes in a lesson. So, a lesson itself is a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, we introduce what we're going to talk about, what we're going to teach. In the middle part, we are teaching what we talked about. And in the third part, we're just going over. We taught this, that, and the other thing. We did this, we did that. You learnt this. And we can do it within the group too, within the lesson plan, like have, 3 different activities which are sharing the same information, but we're doing it in different ways to cater for different people. And we're also repeating that information. So we're using spaced repetition to revisit key concepts over time. Yeah. We're incorporated learning rituals. Know that I always write the lesson up on the board. At this time, we'll be doing this. At that time, we'll be doing that. This is lunch, very important. You can have a break here, and then we'll go on with this. These rituals prepare the learners. There's no surprise. We know what's going to happen. And when we know what's going to happen in the lesson, then we don't have to waste energy trying to anticipate what I need to get ready for next. So, and link new knowledge to familiar routines or symbols to aid memory. So, songs, marching it out, having a dialogue, a bit of humour is helpful, and linking knowledge. Yeah. So just to recap, we've got rituals and repetition, social learning, and the one we started with was storytelling. So storytelling, social learning, and then how rituals and repetition. I think these 3 are key. So the traditions of St Patrick's, they use storytelling, we use repetition, we used what was the other one? Yeah, reflecting on key concepts over time and using our social circumstances. Who's ever went to a celebration by themselves? You don't. We need a community. Telling stories in our community helps those learning. And if we rinse and repeat what we do and how we do it, it's empowering the learner, because they know what's going to happen next. It's no surprises, nothing out of the box. So there you have it. The traditions of St. Patrick's Day remind us that learning is a social, emotional, and ritualistic process. By weaving storytelling, connection, and repetition into adult education, we tap into our brain's natural learning mechanisms. We are creating and strengthening neural pathways. So as we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, think about how these principles can enhance your approach to teaching, training, or coaching, lecturing. And, know that learning sticks when we're in community, when we're engaged, when we are able to make meaning. And sometimes storytelling makes meaning, and when we repeat it. So I'd love to know from you, what are your favourite ways to make learning memorable for your learners? What do you do? How do you do it? Thank you so much for hanging out till the end. And yeah, I'll be back next week. Take care. Happy teaching.